Hey everybody, welcome to the Gentleman Scholars Club. Today's video I'll be doing a review of the classic menswear brand, the Anthology, which you may be familiar with if you frequent social media and look at classic menswear sites online. The Anthology was featured as one of the top 2 brands for Simon Crompton on Permanent Style in terms of soft Italian tailoring or Neapolitan style. I'll be looking at this jacket, which I had made in a mahogany wool, by the Anthology in terms of determining whether the hype is real. I'll be looking at the process that I undertook to get this jacket. I'll be talking about the 2 key aspects of custom tailoring that you always want to keep in mind, which are fit and make, and I'll be looking at the features of the Anthology house style. So stay tuned. So first, in terms of the process, I've previously done a video on some casual ready-to-wear items that I ordered from the Anthology in the past. A cotton towel polo shirt and some Japanese seersucker drawstring pants for the summer. I was always curious about their tailoring as well. But rather than order ready to wear, possibly risk having to do an overseas return, I was curious to try it on in person first to determine whether I liked the house style, how it fit me, and so forth, what sizes to get. And so by coincidence, the Anthology was having a trunk show in New York City at the same time that I was going to be there. Reached out to them on social media and made an appointment. I mentioned to them outright that I may not be buying anything, but I was curious to try on any ready-to-wear items that they had brought with them. And they were happy to meet with me. We made an appointment, and I went to visit them in their hotel room. Buzz Tang and Andy Chang, who are the 2 co-founders of the Anthology, were there, as well as Ed, whose last name I don't know, unfortunately. And they let me try on any ready-to-wear items that they brought with them, including the camel polo coat, which is something I still would like to have in the future, and their famous gray herringbone sport coat. I tried these on, and while I was there, Buzz, Andy, and Ed took a look at me. They determined any sort of adjustments that I might need to the fit, like the sleeve length, shoulder width, length of the jacket, tightness of the chest, and so forth. And they took notes in their book, longhand, next to my name. So if ever I were going to buy something from the Anthology, they would have these notes handy and would be able to make adjustments for me. I didn't buy anything, thanked them, and I really enjoyed the experience. Many people have said that Buzz and the Anthology crew are quite cordial. They're indeed very knowledgeable about the subject of menswear. They're impassioned about tailoring. They are excellent to talk to and super nice as well. So I left there, went home. About a month or so after, on social media, on Instagram, I saw they had posted a rust brown sport coat, which is this in particular. They mentioned that there was just enough fabric left for 1 piece, and I, being partial to rust brown, like tobacco linens, even more so than dark browns, decided to give it a go and use this as an opportunity to try their house style. I find I like rust browns because it pairs nicely with my brown hair, and it can be worn with dark brown trousers, which is something I like to do. So arranged to make an initial payment, which will be 50% of the total price, and 50% will be paid upon prior to delivery, which is great. It's a convenient way of splitting up the purchase of a custom item. This would be sort of a made-to-order plus, will be based on a stock size, in my case 48 EU, with the adjustments that they had noted while I was at the trunk show. So it's always important to go in person and meet with the tailors before doing any sort of custom tailoring. And I would say online bespoke, even with photos, even with video, may not be the best thing. It's always useful to meet with them in person and see what you need to adjust in person. Anthology also offers made to measure, which would require a larger series of body measurements, and they also do full bespoke, where you can choose to make a number of other alterations and more with more handwork and more choices of fabric and so forth. So for me, ready to wear stock size with some alterations was probably going to be enough to begin with. First thing the Anthology does with custom orders is actually to show you a button that they think would go with the jacket. This is kind of a unique entree into the process. Many people overlook buttons, but a cheap button or a button that's not the right color with a jacket can ruin the entire look. Right? If you choose a button that's too light, it might not pair well with the color of the jacket, and it also would not coordinate with your other pieces, like your tie or your trousers. So Buzz and the Anthology crew do recommend the button. They show you the fabric in a photo, place a button on there, and recommend it to you. So to me, this shows their deep interest in the little details, which is something you really like to have in a tailor. They're stylistically aware, and they're also detail-oriented, which bodes well for the success of the process as a whole. So I chose the button. They asked me if I wanted 3 buttons or 4 or 2 or 1 on the sleeve. Went with the 3 button for a more casual sport coat. They asked about the pocket type, which I selected as a patch. They can also do welt, which is their standard, sort of a jetted welt pocket, or they can do a flat pocket. I wanted patch to be more informal. And they asked me about the shoulders and whether I wanted roping, which is something I'll talk about later, in addition to whether I wanted functioning buttons on the sleeves as well. So I got those details ironed out, and it took about a month and 3 weeks, a month and a half for the process from the end of December until mid-February for the jacket to be delivered to me. They did tell me ahead of time that because it was still Christmas week, that period of time, and because Chinese New Year was coming up, that there will be a little bit longer turnaround time on the item. So I imagine if you order other times of the year, the process will be much quicker. But the time that it took was also perfectly fine with me. So let's talk about 2 features of custom tailoring that are highly important, and those are fit and make. As you can see here in the photo, the fit out of the box was exactly perfect. The shoulders, which is something you can't easily alter at the tailor, are the right width. The sleeves, also the right length. And sleeves are usually alterable in terms of making them shorter or longer. But if you have functioning buttons, as I have in this case, it's a little bit more challenging because you can't take a button off and move it up or down. So you really want it to be at the right point for it to be successful, and that's the case here. The chest and the waist are just right. There's no pulling. It's not too wide. There's no Xing at the buttoning point, things like that. And then in terms of total length, it covers my seat and sits nicely. So the fit really effectively done. And the stock size plus notes from the trunk show. The second aspect is make, and that's essentially the quality of the fabrics, the quality of the materials, and the workmanship. You don't want to have ugly stitching, sloppy stitching, uneven stitches. You don't want to have buttons that pop off, shoddy workmanship. In the case of the Anthology, really nice make as well. First of all, the fabric is high quality. It's kind of a mahogany wool, and it's got a little bit of a hairiness to it for autumn and winter. Feels durable and not something that you find everywhere in terms of a fabric. Second thing you might look at would be the Milanese buttonhole, and this is the buttonhole of the lapel, which is hand sewn so that there are really fine stitches delineating the opening of that buttonhole. This is not a huge thing, but it's an earmark or hallmark of quality tailoring and an interest in small details, something that I mentioned earlier as well that the Anthology embodies. Button-wise, the quality of the buttons is high, and they also give you button reinforcements at the back, which is something I'd not seen on other high-end brands, even a ring jacket, ready to wear. So you have your quality button on the front, and then on the back there's a tiny reinforcing button to ensure that they stay on and stay in place. So I appreciate that detail as well. And then I can also talk about the back of the sleeve, where this part of the fabric meets this part. The 2 pieces need to be sewn together in order to create the cylinder of your arm. And what they did was actually allow overlap of about a ½ inch for the piece that goes underneath where the seam is. And that probably will provide more reinforcement, and again shows they're willing to use a little bit more fabric to provide you with that. So those are little details of make that stand out. Of course, there are no visible stitches on places like the lapels or in the pockets. Really high quality work. And then lastly, let's talk about the Anthology house style, and most of that can be seen at the top of the jacket. First, there's the roped shoulder, and what that means is that the sleeve head is attached a little bit higher than this shoulder line, which creates roping of the shoulder right there. This adds a little bit more drama, a little more panache, and a little more formality to the jacket, as you can see there. Some brands do this with a lot of roping. For the Anthology, it's kind of subtle, but is obviously present. The second thing you may notice is the gorge height, gorge is where the lapel meets the collar where the notch is formed. Some brands have the gorge height up toward the shoulder. Those would be more Italian brands. Some have them more toward the chest, which is more traditional. The Anthology tends to have the gorge a little bit lower toward the chest, which speaks to their interest in classic traditional tailoring. See there. Now, speaking of the lapel, they're fairly wide and they're straight right down to the buttoning point. So all these features at the top of the jacket tell you that this is an Anthology garment. If you look on their social media, you can immediately spot these details and point out an Anthology jacket from those features. And then below the lapels, you have the barchetta pocket, which is a curved pocket, typical of Neapolitan tailoring, and it's a nice detail as well. And then lastly, at the bottom of the jacket, you have fairly open quarters, so there's a nice curving out. You have a straight line down to the buttoning point, and then a curving out of the quarters on the front to give you an open quarter look, which is again more of an Italian detail. So overall, I would say the house style has Italian influences in those open quarters, in the barchetta pocket, in the soft shoulders, which are typical of Asian brands, but also has perhaps more British or English tailoring influences than others. For example, the roping of the shoulders and the lower gorge height. So let me know what you think of the Anthology. Do you own any of their items? What are your thoughts on them? Would you commission a jacket from them based on this? Share your feedback in the comments section, in addition to liking the video. Always love to hear your thoughts and viewpoints. Cheers, and thanks for viewing.